I call meeting to order. Please rise for a silent reflection and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Jim.
Mrs. Cynthia? Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Borbach? Mayor Mechanical?
Here. Please read the Open Public Meeting Act.
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice filed in the office of the Borough Clerk, posted on the Borough website and in the municipal building, published as a legal notice in the Co-Star newspaper, and mailed to those requesting notice and providing payment in accordance with Borough policy.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda. And a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Any questions on the agenda? Roll call, Jay?
Yes, Mayor, on the motion to approve the agenda, Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbach?
Yes.
Thank you. On the presentation, Jay, I see you have the office leader going to present. I don't see her.
Yes, Mayor, and essentially that presentation is simply notifying the public that the Monmouth County and its 53 municipalities have been working on the update of the Monmouth County multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan since August of 2012. The draft of the updated plan is expected to be released in the early fall. The first countywide plan was completed in 2009. The plan is a documented evaluation of the natural hazards to which a community is susceptible and the extent to which these events will occur. It identifies an area's vulnerability to the effects of natural hazards and the goals, objectives, and actions required to minimize future loss. Mitigation is preparation and planning now to reduce loss of life and property later by lessening the impacts of future disasters. This plan allows the county and the participating municipalities to apply for pre- and post-disaster mitigation grant funding through FEMA. Once released, residents can review the draft of the all-natural hazard mitigation plan for the county and its 53 municipalities by visiting www.monmouthsheriff.org, click on the OEM icon, and select Hazard Mitigation Plan. I know that Emergency Management Coordinator Rita Murphy has been working with the county in the update process, and there is a link from the borough's website in the emergency management section to the county hazard mitigation update program. And part of that program involves notification to the public, which is the purpose of this announcement today.
Thank you, Jay. We do have an ordinance scheduled for a public hearing. It's ordinance number 2014-5. This is amending the municipal land use regulation for the residential building height in the flood zone. I would like to open for public comment. If you'd like to speak for or against it or have an opinion on it, just step forward, give your name and address.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Frazier. I live at 714 Shore Road. First of all, I want to thank everybody for helping me get this approved for the height to be increased. But unfortunately, when it was added late, because I saw the document stating that it could be raised to 37 feet for the flood zone area. But then you put in late a 3-foot that you must have the first floor at 3 feet, which doesn't allow any kind of buffer for future storms and future raising of the flood levels. So I'm then beholden to have my first finished floor 3 feet above the flood level. So then in the future, when it floods again, I'm going to be in the same spot. You know, what most towns have been allowing is flood-resistant first floors. and or if they're not living, and nobody's gonna live down there, and you're only allowed to have storage, it's instead of having an attic, you have the first floor being storage and garage area. And you can decide to have it enclosed or not enclosed. You can have it with, the town can decide whether that needs to be part of the ordinance or whether it's left up to the homeowner. Many towns leave it up to the homeowner, but if you don't like the look of underneath the house being open, then you can just mandate people to enclose it. And you can mandate any way that they enclose it, but at least have the first floor be flood resistant, so then they can get, when future, or when they raise the flood heights back up to, because they lowered them. Christie lowered them, so, so not so many houses would be included in the flood zones. So when they raise them back up, I still have a buffer, because I'm building a whole new house.
Yeah, what was that first issue?
Yeah, Mayor, as I understand it, this ordinance addresses simply the overall building height adjustment. Currently, the ordinance provides for a maximum of 32 feet building height. This ordinance was intended to provide flexibility and relief for those properties that are located in the flood zone where a non-flood zone house would build a grade and go 32 feet. Under the new preliminary flood maps, the flood elevation requirement has been raised 2 feet over what it previously was. And then additionally, as part of the post-Sandy recognition of flood potential, there is an encouragement to elevate an additional 3 feet above the base flood requirement to provide what's generally termed freeboard. And that provides significant flood insurance relief for property owners. The question about how the area from grade up to that 5 feet is constructed, whether it is enclosed or not enclosed, is not addressed by this ordinance. And frankly, I don't know what the alternatives are, or our regulations are not addressing any requirement one way or the other as far as those go.
I think the nature of your question, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have that extra 3 feet now, which is the standard that Christie suggested, and what you're looking for is perhaps maybe a little bit more flood space. So instead of 3 feet above the flood,
Right.
it might be 4 or 5 feet.
FEMA suggests to allow people to use underneath as parking or storage space, because you're spending.
How much would you need is what I'm asking.
Well, I'm still within the 37 feet. My plan is still within the 37 feet. I just need the first floor to not be, the ground area to not be considered a floor, so then I can have a 2-level house.
So I guess my question is, how many feet, I don't think I understand, how many feet?
The issues with the stories, right? We have an ordinance here that's 2.5 stories, and you're asking for relief that the first bottom part of your house is not considered a floor.
Right.
Otherwise, your house would be 1.5 stories.
Yeah, it's basically, well, yeah, it's considered
And your
2
first-
stories on top.
Right.
2 stories currently.
Do you understand that?
Not completely.
Okay. So sorry.
In other words, you want more free space underneath. So how much more free space underneath would you think would be?
Well,
If you had your wish.
if I had my wish, it would be enough to be able to utilize it for something, because I'm spending,
So is it
$60,000-$70,000 to raise a house.
3?
So, like enough to get a
So
garage,
instead of 3
8
feet,
feet.
it might be 8 feet or 7 feet? Or?
No, it wouldn't be that much. It would probably only be
So is it,
an additionally 4.
so is there somewhere in the ordinance, I don't see it here in this, what we have listed, that specifies the height that the first floor starts at? I mean, yeah, that's what you're saying. You're saying that there is that we have an ordinance that specifies that this first floor starts at 5 feet above where the house begins?
The ordinance states that it has to be 3 feet from where the base flood elevation is.
Okay,
And that has to be your first finished floor.
that's where the first finished floor is supposed to start.
Right.
But I don't see that in this particular ordinance. But
Mayor, if I could just interject with this. The planning board recommended that the language be amended to say, in order to achieve a maximum 3-foot separation of finished floor from the applicable base flood elevation. So they were saying yes, you're raising the height ordinance by 5 feet to permit somebody to go 5 feet higher, subject to bringing the floor up no more than 3 feet above flood. That was the recommendation of the planning board. You're not required to follow that, but that was the recommendation of the planning board, that actually the
Planning board recommended that 3 foot.
yes, maximum 3 feet. Or the height for your finished floor elevation to be no more than 3 feet above base flood elevation.
So it would be either a relief on the 3 foot language or a relief on the half-story language in order to have a little bit more, not the whole upper, part B. Because the rule is 40% has to be under 5 feet for the roof. Even if it were, 70% or a little bit of a buffer for the people that live in the flood area, so then you can have the first floor be flood resistant according to FEMA's terms, non-livable space. Instead of having an attic or, we're not even allowed to have basements in that part in town.
Right.
I think that it should give the most flexibility to the people who are in the flood zone to build however they want. I mean, as long as
She's not gonna exceed the 37 feet.
Yeah, I won't exceed the 37 feet, and I have spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how
So I mean,
to.
as long as you don't exceed the 37 feet, why should we legally be setting a minimum?
I guess you could have a situation where somebody would build a 20-foot high deck with a house on it. It's a visual issue, really.
Right, so that,
You build a one-story house that's 22 feet off the ground with a peaked roof on it.
and I agree that would look ugly,
So
but
that's kind of what the planning board was saying, is as you're going up, you may want to consider.
what did Mass Club do to make sure that the underneath areas were covered?
Mayor?
Yes.
I think Nick's on the planning board. I think she had something.
Our intent with this request to you was because we wanted to be sure that we thought the way it was initially worded.
Mayor, if I may interject, it may be helpful
Do you
to
want me to
ask
say that?
Ms. Eilenberger to
Yes.
approach the microphone so we
Okay,
have.
sorry. Right, so we have it. Okay.
Since it is a public
Sorry,
hearing.
sorry. Hi, Lynn Eilenberger, member of the planning board. Our intent was the fact that where it just said 37 feet, even in that flood, the entire flood zone, our intent was that we wanted to ensure that someone else in the zone who was not raising their house was not able to raise their house to 37 feet. We want to keep it at 32 feet, except in cases where they have to raise the house for the flood. That's what we want that to.
So I think if we change the language that if you were in the flood zone, we could accommodate this request without having people who are not in the flood zone.
Well, we want some sort of language in there that states that they can only raise it to 37 feet if they're actually raising their house, not just in general, anybody in that zone can suddenly raise.
So can we
you
just
know,
say
Counselor,
like
can
the
you-
house is
Yeah.
Counselor, can you
37
build in some kind of protection for us with some kind of language
That
here?
was our intent.
That's all.
the planning board's
So
intent.
give the homeowner more flexibility because
If they're raising their house, right, if then, can we have an if-then statement in here?
yeah, because the concern is the flood zones change or something like that in the future. The world's, can we do something like that to
Yeah, I guess
make both worlds happy?
Well, yeah, my only concern is I don't want to rewrite what the planning board said, but they use the word in order to achieve a maximum 3-foot separation. But the governing body can do whatever they want. It's a recommendation of the planning board, so.
That's what
prefer
our
that we
intent
ship
is,
this-
so that,
Would you prefer that we, as a council, make a recommendation along those lines with the help of our lawyer? Send that to the planning board it'll take longer.
I can't build I can't.
So you would prefer that?
Yeah.
Or we could strip it out and then, how many people are gonna build in the next couple of weeks that we can't then say, and can we please, can we do it again? Or just add an amendment to it that specifically says that you can only be raising it if you are raising it for flood protection, not just because you want it to our house.
Counselor, do you
Would that be
understand the
amended?
issue?
I understand half of it. I guess the suggestion would be, I think, Ms. Eilenberg's suggestion would be to say, shall be 37 feet if the person is elevating or constructing a new house for purposes of complying with firm, not otherwise. So a person who has a house that's still sitting in a non-FEMA compliant house can't add a story to
Right.
it.
But we don't
Or
care
can't even build a
where the
new
first
house.
floor starts, we just don't want it to go,
Above 32 feet if you're not raising your house, and above, and it can't go above 37 feet if you are raising your house. And then that protects 3- and 4-story homes from going up and that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Can you give us some language on the spot, or do we need to come back a month from now for that?
I can if you give me a minute. Maybe we could. We'll come back.
I'll give you 75 seconds.
30 seconds.
Time's up.
Is that something we can revisit by the end of the meeting?
Yes.
Right, so I'll send it to the president. Thank you very much.
I would also suggest, and I spoke to Mr. Delaney about it, that the amended ordinance should include a separate box where you have the chart that should say, maximum roof height in a flood zone, and would say 37, 30, and 37.
Okay,
If
in
you're
that table that
raising your
already
house.
exists.
Like if you're in a flood
If you're
zone.
raising your house.
Correct, but she's not raising her, she's building new.
Yeah.
So if I remember.
But she is.
So 37 feet max in a flood zone.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Everyone?
And still not to exceed 2.5 stories.
Right.
My suggested language would be the maximum building height for principal structures and flood insurance rate map per flood zone shall be 37 feet for structures that are being raised or newly constructed in order to meet flood zone guidelines.
That sounds good.
Right. And then you can't put a deck up 40 feet high because you're not doing that to meet their, okay. Where do we go from here with that?
Well, I would suggest that the mayor continue with any other public comment, and at the conclusion of that, then there should be a vote to amend this ordinance as Mr. Cornelia has outlined, and assuming that that is adopted, then we adopt the ordinance as amended. Does that?
Does that make everybody happy?
Sounds good. Is there any other comment?
Not bad for being on the fly, Scott.
I'd like to make a comment. My name is Peter Cavanaro, I live at 2423 Hamilton Avenue, Spring Lake Heights, and I just want to thank the board for their wisdom in raising this up and helping the families that are affected by the flood zone. I am not affected by the flood zone, but I'm in front of Ken's, and I know a situation, and I appreciate the planning board's efforts to restrict what they think is as a problem, but I strongly urge you to follow through on your recommendation to remove that maximum 3-foot separation from the finished floor to the base flood elevation. And I think what you're doing is a great thing for the town, and I appreciate it very much. I support it 100%.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any? Now, should we close the public comment and then adopt that ordinance? Seeing no hands, I'm going to close the public comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need a motion for
We
this?
need a motion to adopt.
I'd like-
We got to get the language.
Are you ready for this?
Sure.
All right, I'd like to make the motion of amending the ordinance as per the language you read
Sure.
5 minutes ago.
For the record, I'll just read it in again. My suggestion would be in the ordinance which is in the council package, there's underlined language in black, which is the proposed new language that is being added to the existing ordinance. The maximum building height for principal structures in flood insurance rate map, firm flood zone shall be 37 feet. And my suggestion, for clarification purposes, would indicate adding the following languages: for structures that are being elevated or newly constructed to meet flood zone construction guidelines.
That would be very much.
Additionally, my suggestion would be that the table below would include a separate box for firm flood zones and would have a gable hip maximum height of 37 feet, a flat height of 30 feet, and a mansard roof of 37 feet with an indication, again, by way of asterisks, that building heights in a flood zone refer to newly constructed or houses being elevated in order to meet flood zone guidelines.
So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
I couldn't say it myself.
Any other questions?
That's good.
Roll call, Jay.
Yes, on the motion to amend ordinance number 2014-05 as indicated by Mr. Keneally. Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
No. Yes.
Mr. Tinker?
Yes.
And Mr. Borba?
Yes.
And now they are
Now,
appropriate.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt the
Need a
ordinance as
motion and a
amended.
second to
I'll make
adopt.
that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? A roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borba?
Yes.
Thank you. Scott, you and Jay will get that.
I'll take care of this.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, the public comment section where you may step forward and speak on any agenda item you like. You step forward, give your name and address. Seeing no hands, need a motion to close the public comment?
Make that motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have the council reports. Mr. Titt, please.
Sure, we just ended our summer rec program. We had the extended week. Also this year, we had good attendance, close to 200 kids. And now we're into soccer signups and soccer season.
Mr. Warbeck.
Thank you. No, nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yes, I have a couple of things I want to report on here that the chief has provided me with. We have had some letters sent to us in regards to our officers and some of the fine work that they have been doing. The first letter is from a Mary Tierney, and apparently she suffered a heart attack, and through the efforts of Sergeant Gunnell and Patrolman Zachary Ramp, they were able to very quickly and efficiently provide her with the resuscitation and everything that she needed. And the first aid squad transported her to Jersey Shore, and she had immediate surgery because the heart attack was so severe. And she wanted to thank the first aid squad and our two officers for help. And then the other one was also a heart attack, and this is from Larry Devine. His wife Cassie suffered a heart attack. She was by herself. She called 911, and within a matter of a minute or two, our guys arrived, which was Patrolman Christopher Bennett and Patrolman Travis Ventimiglia, and they started administrating CPR, and within a matter of minutes, the first aid arrived. And Mr. Devine says here in his letter that he cannot say enough about the professional, courteous, and caring responses to any calls that he has had to make during his 35 years here in the borough, and that he wants to commend all of the people that do this response, police and first aid. And then the next thing I have here is from the chief himself. And it's a letter of commendation for Sergeant Edward Gunnell and Patrolman Zachary Ramp. On the night of August the 12th into the 13th, during a fast-moving storm which caused flooding, alarms, and downed tree limbs. Both patrolmen displayed exceptional commitment to the town, more than merely placing out cones and diverting traffic safely off of State Highway 71 when the buildup of the rainwater rendered the roadway unsafe. Their diligent efforts of constant patrol and the monitoring of the rising water throughout town was essential to safeguarding the community. And a matter of fact, the chief was here that whole entire night with his guys, and he witnessed their actions, and he wrote this letter of commendation in reference to the way that they performed their duties on that night. And I would just like to say that, and the chief is here, and I know he's gonna probably shoot me for this, but I would just like to say that we happen to have a chief of police that is, in my opinion, exemplary. When his guys are working, he's working. When there is a situation in town, even if he has gone home, he returns. He makes sure that he is here to assist. He doesn't take the work away from the guys, and I'm not saying that, but there are many times when there has been situations where they have been busy and he's had to help out. And I just feel that we in town need to recognize him for all of his efforts and his dedication to the job that he does. Now, on another note, and I'm not going to get into specifics because I can't, because I do not know, but I do want to ask that everyone in this town send out their prayers for one of our officers. His son has been in CHOP for 3 weeks. I do not know any details. I know it's an extremely serious situation. The officer is Casey Wilms, and it is his 18-month-old son who is in the hospital. Casey is very private. Casey is not putting out a lot of information. So we are just asking that everyone please keep him, his son, and his family in their prayers. I would also say, you know, right now he and his wife are over there on a consistent basis. His other son is being taken care of by family. And if we do hear anything, we will let people know, I am sure. But we are as much in the dark as a lot of other people. So when we know whatever is going on, hopefully we can get it out to everybody. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you, sir. I thank the chief and our police department, and we will keep the Wilms family in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you, sir. Mr. Short.
I have nothing to report.
And Mr. Brown.
Nothing this time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We do have a list of reports here. Do you have any questions or any comments on any of those? You guys had a chance to look through them? Jay, you have anything you would like to further explain on that list?
I did have a question.
Yes, you bet.
There's a pretty big difference in the fines and stuff from one year to the next.
And that's just the vagaries of,
Actually, I think it's probably best attributed to the weather this year. It was a very severe weather, and
Right, yeah.
as a result, the typical traffic violations, I don't think.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. All right, thanks. Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thank you. We do have, at this point in the meeting, we have a few resolutions we have to award. Resolution R 2014-132. This is for the contract for real property data collection. We need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And do we have any questions?
Mayor, I just should note that this resolution was tabled from our last meeting, or carried to this meeting, and at that time there were some questions that were raised, and I provided a memo included with the resolution that I believe addresses those questions.
And the questions were covered. answer, no, sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other towns, you know, are paying, I mean, I really don't like this, but I think if we don't pass something, something will be imposed, I'm thinking. I don't know if there are other people, you know, we could discuss this, I'm not really thrilled about it, but all of our questions were answered, and I think we're,
I'm not.
I don't like when the state forces us to do stuff, is what I'm saying.
Unfortunately, Tom, the state's been forcing us to do reevaluations for years now. And we just can't.
And we don't need to be fined either.
This just passes with a simple majority.
Anyone else have a question?
And I think it's just the best way to do something that we have to do. I mean,
Yep.
I don't love it, but I don't love any of the ways that you have to assess the properties. I think at least this way, it spreads the cost out, and I think it gives it the best chance to have the biggest percentage of town that's properly assessed. And if you can assess 95% of the town correctly, then almost everybody's paying their fair share. And I don't know you can get much better than that. So I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a better way of doing it, but if it's gonna be property taxes, there's gotta be assessments, and I don't know, this way seems, although it's being imposed on us, it seems like the best way. I don't know, I can't think of a better way. Wish I could. I mean, that's my thought.
Anything else? Roll call, Jim.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I missed the motion in a second.
I'll make a motion,
I'll second.
but I think it was Sarah and Jim initially.
It was
Yeah.
Jim and me initially.
But we'll do it
But
again.
we can do it, I don't care.
And on the roll call, Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
No.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
That's 4 affirmative votes, 1 negative vote, Mayor.
Thank you, Jay. A resolution on 2014-139, a change order for Hurricane Sandy emergency watershed. Need a motion and a second.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Do you have any questions on change order? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-140, another change order, final for the Fletcher property. Motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? A roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-141, supporting the dry silver or get pulled over.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any question? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-142, rescheduling the fireworks at the golf club. Motion and a second.
When was the original scheduled fireworks?
Jay?
July 4th.
Okay.
It was
July
3rd, 4th.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
When is it rescheduled for?
The 31st of August.
Thank you.
Resolution R 2014-143, consent items for the community center and investment bank.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any question? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Need a motion to move the bills and finance committee?
I will make the motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Resolution R 2014-144, approving the payments for the itemized claims on August 15th, 2014 bill.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second
Do
it.
we have any questions? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach.
Yes.
Public comment? You may speak on any item. If you like, just step forward, give your name and address.
Hey, Rich Carriger, do you want to come up and just say something about the Veterans Day? I know you're starting to work on it, so we might as well start to get the word out.
Okay, Veterans Day luncheon, all veterans in Spring Lake Heights, scheduled for Doolin's, November 11th. The venue is booked, the entertainment is booked. Now we just have to figure out how we're going to get funding for it.
Have to pay for it.
Anybody wants to contribute? See Mr. J, and he can advise. We'll gladly accept any and all contributions. Those of you that have been there in the past, very successful event. We've had about 120 veterans. We have the American Legion Honor Guard, we have bagpipers, we have local entertainment, and there's enough food for everybody, obviously, and just have to figure out how to pay for it. Again, or how we can or cannot advertise, or what has to be done. So, generally speaking, it runs anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 maximum. And see what we can figure out. It's, again, November 11th at noon time.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. Anyone else like to make a comment on any item? Seeing no hand, need a motion to close the public comment section?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone else have any comments to make before we adjourn? Comments?
Apologize, I'm late.
Okay, Tom. You're forgiven.
I want to thank Scott for changing that ordinance on the spot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. I need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.